Okay, so good morning once more. And this week we've been teaching about the law of attraction. That was the topic that was chosen here for Los Angeles this week. So when I was preparing and thinking about what topics in the Torah relate to this now very popular secular thing. So one thing that came to mind is what we call a parzuf, a chart, that every chart is based upon the model of the 10 sefirot. There are 10 emanations, and any full set of concepts in the world, whether it's from the Torah, whether it's from nature, whether it's from the psyche, a psychological thing or a physical thing or a spiritual thing, whatever it happens to be, it must, in the final analysis, parallel and correspond to the most basic model of creation, which is the 10 sefirot, because that's the model that Hashem uses in creating every phenomenon of our reality. Now, psychologically, in the soul, the most basic model is one that many people here, I'm sure, are familiar with, that besides the names of the sefirot themselves, which I also hope that everyone knows, Keter, crown, Chokhmah, wisdom, Binah, understanding, Dat, as it's written here, they all appear here on this page. First is the supernatural or the super rational level of the soul, which is called the crown. Then there are 3 intellectual faculties of the soul, which are called Chokhmah, Binah, Dat, Chabad, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And then there are 7 emotive powers of the soul, from loving kindness until kingdom, Malchut at the end. And so the most important correspondence in Chassidut is what, again, I imagine and hope that many people are familiar with, that the crown itself has 3 heads to it, that's the term, which are faith and pleasure and will. And then wisdom is inner experience. Chassidut reveals and discusses the inner experience behind each one of these 10 sefirot, or 11, or sometimes 13, it expands in Kabbalah. So actually the crown, the super-rational level, has 3 different sub-levels, each of which is called a head. And in the soul, it's simple faith, which is the most super-rational experience of the soul, then pleasure, and then will. They're all above the intellect, precede before the intellect. They're all called the crown. And the intellect which is Chokhmah, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. The 3 inner experiences which correspond are selflessness, bitul, and joy, simcha, and the unification, which is yichud. These words don't appear here. Everybody's supposed to know before beginning. Then the next 3, which are the 3 primary emotions of the heart, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, loving kindness and might and beauty, so their inner experience is called love, fear, and compassion. Ahava, Yira, Rachamim. Then come another triad of emotions, but those are the emotions that manifest when a person begins to act, to implement the primary emotions of his heart. Because if a person just has love, he's not yet doing anything with his love, he's not implementing his love. As soon as he starts to implement, then that reveals in the soul another 3 emotions, which are called Netzachot, Yesod, victory, acknowledgement, and foundation. But the inner experiences of which are, it's called active trust, the trust that Hashem is going to give me the power to enact my desires, to fulfill my desires, and then comes tmimut, sincerity, that the action is with sincerity. That's the inner experience of Hod. And then comes devotion, or the word actually in Hebrew is simply emet, truthfulness. I'm true to my will, and I stay true to my will, and I'm devoted to realize the will and the emotion. Those are the three active emotions. Then the final one, Malchut, is simply a sense of, just like a king, that a true holy king has always an inner sense of lowliness. At one at the same time that he is exalted over his people, but inside his heart, the archetypal character and personification of a king, of course, is David HaMelech, and he, in relation to himself, says in the Tanakh, in the Bible, V'hayiti shafar b'einai, that I'm always lowly in my own self-estimation. Because he's very, very low in himself, that's what makes him deserve, in God's eyes, to become a king and a leader of the people. So the inner experience of kingship is, which is the last one, is called lowliness. Lowliness, humility, shiflut. Right? So again, all of these terms are supposed to be pre-knowledge. This particular chart, there are hundreds of such charts that take the basic model of the sefirot and apply it to some phenomenon. This particular one, as far as I remember, is a very, very important one that we've never actually studied any place in depth. And again, this is it's old. It's years and years old, but it was never studied, never written up. But as soon as the topic here for Los Angeles became the law of attraction, so that immediately sparked that attraction that appears here. That's one of the, you'll see Chesed is called the power of attraction. So that's why we chose this particular chart to study today. And again, it's a very, very fundamental. After the basic understanding of the inner soul of the sefirot, very likely this is the most important psychological chart to understand. In Kabbalah and Chassidut we're taught that every sefirah, when it's rectified and complete, it has within it all of the sefirot. It's like a hologram. But every one reflects everything. Nonetheless, there's one predominant sefirah, that there is, or power, or characteristic, that's its name. But each name has in it everything. So just to get a sense of this, of what we're going to now begin to discuss, is that the particular Yesod is foundation. We said before it's emet, or it's devotion to fulfill one's purpose with exactly as it should be, without compromise, in truth. It's the drive to fulfillment. It's the contact. In other words, sometimes it's explained that kingdom, the lowest one, is actually the outside world that we're working on. It's like a painter has a canvas. So what finally appears on the canvas is the Malchut. But when he puts his brush on the canvas, the brush is Yesod, his foundation. If right now you're writing on your piece of paper, so according to Kabbalah, your pen is Yesod, and the piece of paper that you're writing on is Malchut. And that's called a unification. In Kabbalah, it's a groom and a bride. The piece of paper is the bride, it's Malchut, and the pen that you're writing with is the groom. It's a yichud. Right. So the yesod thereby is the contact and the channel of writing what you're feeling and what you're thinking, and even your super rational soul, part of the soul, inscribing it on reality, or it's impressing it upon reality. It doesn't yet mean that there are words involved, because actually verbal expression, as we're going to see, is considered part of Malchut itself. Malchut itself is called the world of speech. But the link between your inside and the outside, that contact, that's called Yesod. Yesod is called the contact of one's inner self, one's inner world with the outside world. And that's the purpose of man, not to be autistic. That's bad. We have to be able to impress, to stamp ourselves on reality. That's what we're here to do, to make a positive impression on reality. That channel which impresses ourselves, everything that's going on inside on reality, that's Yesod, the sefirah of Yesod. So this whole chart is actually describing the Yesodot, the power of the contact inherent in each one of the sefirot. Because every sefirah has its particular Yesod to it, which is its individual drive and thrust to contact and connect and impress itself upon reality. Okay. So again, that's what's unique about this particular chart. Now, usually when we meditate and try to construct such a chart, we begin with a topic which is discussed explicitly in Kabbalah or Chassidut, and very often the way that it's presented, even if you study and try to find all of the sources that relate to this particular topic, very often what you'll come out with at the end is a partial picture. That you'll never find in one place the whole picture at once, but you'll find parts of it. For instance, in Tanya itself, which is the classic text of Chassidut, so there's one part that explains some of the inner experiences of the sefirot. Because in Kabbalah we have the whole 10 sefirot with their names, and more or less with understanding what they mean. We have how they relate to the limbs of the body, which is an external manifestation. But what they really mean as inner experience of the soul, that's before Chassidut, that was not known and revealed. So just a simple example, that Chassidut says that the three primary emotions, which are in Kabbalah, they're called Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, loving kindness and might and beauty. In the body they correspond to the two arms. The right arm is the Chesed and the left arm is the Gvura. And the torso of the body is the Tiferet. So that we all know from Kabbalah. Chassidut comes and says that the inner experience also means the inner motivation, what's going on inside of you. Because loving kindness does not mean the love. It means the extension of one's right hand to give. But obviously a person will not extend his right hand to give if there's not something even more inner in his heart that's motivating that extension of the right hand to give. What is that? That's love itself. That's the easiest one to understand, that love motivates loving kindness. In Hebrew, ahava, which is love, is two different words. Love is ahava, and loving kindness, which is just an English translation, but it's not of the same word. It doesn't have ahava in it at all. It's another word, chesed. In Kabbalah, chesed is the right hand. Where is it coming from? Ahava. Who told me that? The Baal Shem Tov told me. In Kabbalah, you would never necessarily know that. You would know that loving kindness is the right arm. But this one is pretty simple, so you could imply that loving kindness must be coming from love, especially if you talk English, because love is in the word loving kindness. Each one of the sefirot also corresponds to an archetypal soul. Loving kindness is Abraham Avinu, the first Jew. So we find in the Tanakh, in the Bible itself, we find Chesed Abraham. That Chesed, which is loving kindness, goes together with Abraham. We also find Abraham Ohavi, that Abraham is my lover. So both the inner experience and the outer manifestation we find explicitly in the Bible in reference to Abraham, who is the archetypal soul of Chesed. That is not the case with regard to all the other souls. That is so clear. So once more, the fact that love motivates loving kindness, that's pretty obvious. The fact that fear is inside might, that's totally counterintuitive. Unless we really contemplate why that is so. The fact that compassion, rachamim, mercy, is the inner experience of beauty in the sense of praiseworthiness. Beauty is not necessarily physical beauty, it also means physical beauty, but a beautiful soul, a beautiful personality. So a beautiful personality is a compassionate soul. Right, so again, that's also the ones that tend to the right. The Tiferet is in the middle, but it tends to the right. Those are more obvious, the relation between the inner motivation and the outer manifestation. The one on the left, which is might, so that's not so clear why fear is the inner motivation of might. The simple, if we already said it, we'll just say the simple thing, that sometimes if a person is afraid, that's what makes him make a muscle and fight against and overcome what he's afraid of. So that's the simplest way to understand that fear of something arouses mightfulness in the soul. But again, it's not so obvious. There are other explanations also. The archetypal soul of fear is Yitzchak. So of Yitzchak, we find explicitly Pachad Yitzchak, that his manner of worshipping Hashem is through fear. We don't find Yitzchak HaGibor, Yitzchak the mighty one. Just in Kabbalah, Shimshon HaGibor, who is the biggest Gibor in the world? Samson, Shimshon. So actually in Kabbalah, Shimshon derives, his soul is related to Yitzchak Avinu. But as we said, with regard to Abraham, we find both idioms in the Bible itself. Chesed LaAvraham, which is loving kindness, the outer manifestation, and Avraham Oavi, that he is the lover of God. Alright, so just we'll take these three primary emotions, which correspond to the three patriarchs of our people. So it says in Tanya explicitly that the inner experience is in, if you want to see it in Tanya, you look in Igeret HaKodesh, number 15, and you'll see it explained that the inner experience of these three is, as we just now said, Ahava Yira Rachamim. That's a chidush, that's an innovation of Chassidut. Then you will definitely find in someplace else in Chassidut that Chochmah, its inner experience is Bitul, which is selflessness. You will find in Chassidut explicitly that Bina, which is the mother principle, understanding, Chochmah is the father principle. Bina is the mother principle in the mind. The inner experience is Simcha. Again, these are less intuitive. The fact that selflessness motivates or brings about flashes of insight, of new insight. Wisdom means flashes of new insight. So if I say that the inner experience is Bitul, selflessness, it means that that's what's responsible for the flash of insight. The true flash of insight in a moment, in that very moment that you become nothing. So that is the most appropriate moment that you will receive a flash of new insight. Why is simcha, joy, the inner experience of understanding? So again, it's less intuitive, even less intuitive than the bitul inside the chokhmah. But the explanation is that if a person, to understand means to fully comprehend something. I got it. It's called tfisa. I got it, the idea. If there are people now sitting around and you didn't 100% get it, what I said, so you're not happy. You want to be happy, but whether you know it or not, you'll only be happy, you only start to smile when you got it. So that's the explanation of Chassidut, that happiness is the inner experience of Binah. Because Binah is fully to comprehend, you got it. Right, so what were we saying? We're saying that there is one place in Chassidut that the three primary emotions are explained, what their inner experiences are. There are other places that you'll find one by itself and another one by itself. But there's no place at all that you'll find it all together, because for some mysterious, important reason, the tzaddikim made, in a certain way, a point of never painting the whole picture, leaving it, say, for our generation to do that. So again, what we said before, that each one of them has its inner experience. That's we'll call it inductive reasoning. That was left for our generation to do. Now, the same is true of this. That this is one level above and after the basic Chassidic understanding that each sefirah has its inner experience to it, which motivates it. Let's go back one moment to understanding and joy. We said that if a person gets it, so then he smiles. But deep down, the reason that you make an effort to get it is because you know, either consciously or unconsciously, that you're going to smile when you get it. So the latent smile, that you want to smile, that's what motivates you also to get it. How do we know that the joy has to do with the mother principle? Because it says, it's a verse in the first chapter of Hallel that we read. It says, Eim habanim smecha, the mother of children is happy. So once more, the simple meaning, the simple reading is that a mother that was barren, first she was barren like the matriarchs. When Hashem finally has Rahmanas on her and she bears a child, so she is infinitely joyful. But in Chassidut it explained that if you want to be a mother, you should also try to feel joy, because the joy also will bring out your motherhood and make it, even if you have problems having children. So joy is the power of the soul that helps you have children. So once more, the result is sometimes also the beginning. So this was explained. This just in order to understand just one more drop about the inner properties. Now, what we're going to do now, what this chart is all about, is it said that each one of these sefirot has its drive to self-realization. Yesod is its contact, the contact of its inner reality to outer reality, which once more is this drive to realize itself on the canvas of the world. And so what do we say? That anything like this, there must be some partial, there must be some beginning, which is explicit in Chassidut. And then we have to take it from there. Like it's the responsibility or the schus, the merit of our generation to be given clues and to meditate based upon these clues, to take it from there to fill in the picture. It's like you give a child a picture that's outlined and he just has to put in the colors and fill it in. So that is also a very, very general thing about the nature of the meditation that was left for us to do in our generation. It's like a picture book that you simply, all the outlines are there, but you have to now just fill it in. Right, so in this particular case, the basic triad that was explained is the Chabad. Because throughout the Chassidic literature, especially the deepest Chabad literature, which is the Middle Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, and perhaps his greatest Chassid, which is Rabbi of Parej, throughout their works, they refer to Chabad, Chochmah Bina Dat, not as Chochmah Bina Dat, but as Haskala, Hasaga, Hakara. Haskolo, Hasogo, Hakor. So once more, just like the Alter Rebbe in Tanya said that Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet are love, fear, and mercy. So here we have a new thing, that it's terminology. The terminology is very important. Just let's say another word about terminology. The classic and greatest sage of the Kabbalah, after Rashbi, who composed the Zohar, is the Arizal, who lived in Tzfat approximately 500 years ago. All of what nowadays is known as Kabbalah, whoever studies Kabbalah is studying his revelations, the Arizal, most of which were written down by his great disciple, Reb Chaim Vital. Now, in describing the secrets of creation, he begins, the very first beginning is called the Tzimtzum HaRishon, the primordial initial contraction of God's infinite light in order to make room, as it were, for the world to be created in. Right? So it's an image, it's a symbol, but that's the beginning. The beginning is called the Tzimtzum, the contraction. Did anything go on before the contraction? Were there any processes or things that happened inside the infinite light before the contraction started? So in the traditional writings of the Rizal, there are allusions that things maybe did go on before, but we can't talk about them. That's really too mysterious for us. That's beyond us. Anistarot Hashem Elokeinu. What went on inside the infinite light before Hashem began the creative process, that's not for us. That's for the fears. But first of all, there are some other disciples of the Rizal that actually do talk about it, not just allude that maybe something was going on before, but actually talk about it. But Reb Chaim Vital was the greatest disciple. He was the one that the Rizal was masmich, ordained to reveal the Kabbalah, and none of the other of the Talmidim, of the disciples. So he made a point very, very clearly of not talking about what happened or what took place before the Tzimtzum HaRishon. But then comes the Chassidut, and Chassidut does, especially the deep Chassidut of, once more, of the Middle Rebbe, Rabbi Hillel of Parej, Rabbi Isaac of Homel, and then afterwards the Rebbe Rashab, talk about things before the Tzimtzum. How is that possible? Why? What is the reasons? So the explanation that's brought in Chassidut is that the books that were written by the other Talmidim that were not ordained by the Rizal, that they heard things and they actually wrote them, but they can't be relied upon 100%. It's not coming from the total ordainment of Reb Chaim Vital. Whereas Chassidut, obviously, it's 100% to be studied and to be contemplated, to be relied upon. So what happened? Why can Chassidut talk about these things that the Arizal himself can't talk about? So the simple explanation is that there was. It's a very simple sentence to say, but it's very profound to understand. That before the Baal Shem Tov, there was no vocabulary to say these things. There's no lotion. This is just to get a clue of how important terminology is. The Arizal himself, you can be the greatest sage and have all of the insight, but you don't have the words to say it. So if you don't yet have the words, the proper words to say it, better not say it. Better keep it a secret. Words, the vocabulary, the words to say it, that's called the kelim, the vessels. What you know inside, that's the lights. The question is, do you have vessels to convey it? Now, if we're talking about making an impression on the taking from one's inside world, the inside experience, and stamping it on the outside, which is Yesod, so that itself demands vocabulary, the proper vocabulary. It's called Lashon HaChassidut, that's the term that's used. That only Lashon HaChassidus is capable of expressing things that happened within the infinite light before the initial construction. That's Lashon HaChassidus. The terminology or the vocabulary of Chassidut, that's called Lashon HaChassidut. So, just based upon this, it's also very, very clear that if the sages, the Chassidic sages, the deepest ones, which is the Mitzvah Rebbe and the Pillar of Parashas, we said, if they now, not that they abandon the traditional terminology of Chokhmah, Binah, V'Da'at, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, but if they like to use other terms, and again, they're not talking about the inner experience now. If the inner experience, they know that the inner experience of Chokhmah is Bitul, and of which is selfless, and of Binah it's Simcha, which is joy, and of Da'at it's Yichud, which is unification. But they're talking about the intellectual faculties, which are the outer manifestations, but nonetheless they want new terms for that, new words for that. That the words, one by one, appear in Tanya, but to actually coin that these three words go together, and these three words are the three sefirot and the three powers, the three intellectual faculties of Chabad, Chokhmah, Binah, V'Da'at, that is unique only in the second and third generation of Chabad. And once more, what are the words? Haskola, Hasoga, Hakora. Which here, now this is chart, I thought that maybe we would have studied it in the evening classes, where we imagine that many people don't know Hebrew. But for this class, so that's why it was written without the Hebrew words. Besides the words for the sefirot, but the words for the concepts do not appear in their original Hebrew, which they should. It's because it was thought that this was for a non-Hebrew audience. But for us right now, it's essential to know the Hebrew words, which should actually be written here on the page. There's what here is called the power of intellect. We'll begin with the three, the Chabad. What here is called the power of intellect is Haskola. What is here called the power of comprehension is Hasaga. And what here is called the power of recognition is Hakara. So this appears. So just from this is explicit, that these three go together in this way. And that once more, that immediately suggests that there must be something corresponding to this new reading of the Sefirot, to expand it, extend it to all of the Sefirot, if we get the idea of what's going on here. Once more, the idea of what's going on here is that it's taking Chokhmah and discovering the contact that Chokhmah has with reality. And the same is true of
the contact,
like the contact point, the Yesod. How Chokhmah contacts and impresses itself upon reality. Actually, even this version of the English translation, the original chart was all in Hebrew. was just after we thought that we'd come here and discuss it, so I asked our English writer, whose name is Moshe Ganold, to translate it into English. And actually I told him all the words what to use, because it's not always obvious and clear what English word to use for a Hebrew term. It's not obvious. So after the first version, I told him to write Haskalah, the power of intellect. Then I regretted that choice, and I told him to rewrite it, but apparently it didn't. You didn't get the updated version. The new word that is better instead of intellect is perception, the power of perception. You can change that on your chart. It's the power, because intellect is too general. It's all intellect. Even though Haskalah does mean just innate intellect. The word Haskalah is not that it's a mistake to translate Haskalah intellect. It's just innate, because Haskalah comes from the seichel. Seichel in Hebrew is intellect. So the beginning, the initial point of intellectuation, which I can't say properly, is Haskalah. But the word seichel, which is intellect in Hebrew, is also the root of the word lihistakel, which means to observe, to look. That's why Chokhmah is always identified with sight, spiritual sight, inner sight. Even the term that we use before in English reflects that. In English, the term is insight, a word which often always comes from sight. He said the idiom or the experience of a new insight is a flash of insight across the mind. That's a sight idiom, a sight experience. Now, if you take the concept of sight and you expand it, so even though we said that relatively wisdom is sight and understanding is hearing, but sight is considered the general and all-inclusive perception of reality. So the word Haskalah can either be translated just as native, innate intellect, the beginning of intellect. That was our first choice. But then to make it clearer and to make it less general and more particular, more specific, so we said that it's better to translate this term, the power of perception. But people have 5 physical senses. According to Kabbalah, there are actually 12 senses, but we know of 5 physical senses: sight, hearing, smelling, taste, and touching. Clearly, a sense is the most primary contact between the psyche and reality. Much of even modern philosophy is based on that, from Kant on. That the only way that we know what's out there, if there is anything out there, if we're not just fooling ourselves, is through the 5 senses. So if you don't have senses, if you don't see, if you can't see and you can't hear and you can't, so you're totally autistic. There's no contact with reality whatsoever. Wisdom is perception. And perception, even though perception is primarily sight, a sight experience, but it is all-inclusive of all of the manners and channels with which the psyche perceives reality. Now, once more, perceiving reality is the beginning of the relationship, rapport between me and you. It's me meaning what's inside of me, and you meaning everything outside of me. If I see you, why is sight the most important? Because if I see you, it means that we're standing face to face. If I hear you, I could just be hearing about you. It might be in Alaska or some other place, some other world, and I hear about you. So when I say to perceive, I mean as direct perception as possible. So that the most direct perception is looking at you. face to face. That's a chokhmah experience. But for instance, when the Torah was given, the sound, the hearing was just like sight. It's like we heard the voice, we saw the voice, and we heard the sight. There was an inter-inclusion between the senses, because it all became a direct perception experience. Alright, so that is to explain, what did we now just explain? We explained that the word for chokhmah, which is haskalah, that it has to do with histaklut. For instance, there's an expression in the Zohar that the test between holy souls and non-holy souls, or holy spirituality and non-holy spirituality, is that a decree is pronounced in heaven to all spiritual entities. And the decree says whoever wants to see the king and nothing more should come right now, because this is the one in a lifetime opportunity to bathe in the sight of the king. But you're not going to get you're not getting anything from it. You're not going to receive anything for yourself. You're just going to merit to see the king. That's called li'istaklo bi'akol demalko v'tulo. So it says that makes that's called yitbararu v'yitlabnu. That's what automatically divides between holiness and non-holiness. That whatever is holy will run spontaneously to see the king. But whatever is not holy, when he's told that you're not going to get anything out of it, so why make the effort? So that decree is what makes the distinction between what's called havdalah, between holiness and non-holiness. So that actually, what it means is that holiness is a deep sense of haskalah, of wisdom. Wisdom is, as we said before, the inner experience of wisdom is bitul. If you have bitul, then you just want to see the king, to perceive the king, to stand in the face of the king. With tulo, not just the opposite. A person that really has bitul, he doesn't want to receive it. He doesn't want to get anything out of it, because he just wants to look at the king. So as long as we made this point, so we'll see another very, very important thing. Now in Israel, of course, there's we have a lot of problems, and the basic problem is that the Jewish people has no sense whatsoever of what's called Malchut Yisrael. That the Torah commands when the Jewish people returns to Israel, there are 3 commandments that the community is commanded to do. And the first of which is to appoint a king. The second of which is to fight and to defeat all of the enemies of Israel around. And the third of which is to build the temple in Jerusalem. And they must follow that order. Because the temple is only to be built after the enemies are defeated, after a king has been appointed. So it all begins with what's called Malchut. Since for thousands of years, Malchut, the concept of kingdom and kingship, has become a very, very non-desirable political thing. From the Renaissance on, from the later, maybe a few hundred years later, from Napoleon on. So people don't like kings. Kings are corrupt. So again, the most important thing that has to be clarified is what we mean by a king. What are the responsibilities of a king? You know that the last portion of laws of the Rambam, Maimonides, of the most important code of Jewish law. So the last section is devoted to the laws of kings. So it's very important to understand what a true Jewish king is supposed to be, especially if we want to do it, to perform the one first commandment which will ensure our presence in the land of Israel. And without that, our presence is not ensured in the land of Israel. So that's why I'm just now telling a story a little bit. That's why, for instance, there are not even many yeshivot that are like tuned in that the most important sugya sugya means the topic in halakha. That the most important sugya to contemplate, that rabbis should contemplate and discuss and write about, is Hilchot Melachim.
Is what?
Hilchot Melachim, the laws of kin. That's the most, for the general Jewish people, the most important thing now is to delve into Hilchot Melachim of the Rambam at the level of Nigla. But for the individual, everything is important. You have to learn Hilchot Shabbos to know how to keep Shabbos, and you have to learn Kashrus in order to be kosher. You have to learn all of the halachot of the Torah. But for the Jewish people as a whole, the most important thing is Hilchot Melachim, especially now that Hashem has brought back a very good portion, 10-year boom, meaning more and more Jews return to the land of Israel. So now so I'm just saying that once we're telling a story, that for instance, as far as I know, the only yeshiva which really seriously studies this topic is our yeshiva in Shechem. It used to be in Shechem, now it's in Yitzhak. In fact, there's a whole machon, a whole institute to write halakha. It's called chakirot, investigations in halakha regarding Hilchot Melachim. Why am I saying all of this? Not just to tell this story, but to get to a point. After all is said and done, about to know all of the laws, which means all of the rights what rights does a king have? A king is also under the law. He's not above the law. What rights he has, what his responsibility is towards the people, what the responsibility of the people is towards him. That's what the laws are all about. To understand this, then I can go one stage more, and as I said before, what is his inner character traits? So as we said before, the inner character trait of a true king that follows King David, who's the archetypal figure, is shiflut. But then I can ask one other question. I can say, just let's forget about all of the halachot. How can the people really, in one simple formula, try to point at the king? The ultimate king, of course, the Mashiach, which obviously was the top. This whole thing was the topic of the Rebbe. That's what the Rebbe was into. Mashiach, King Mashiach, Melech HaMashiach. So how can we really know? We should definitely study all of the laws. But how can? Is there one simple way to formulate who should be the king? So there's a very, very simple saying in Chassidut that has to do with this. If there's one soul that loves looking at everyone, and that everyone loves looking at him, that's the king. There's one person, once more, that he loves all of the faces, and that all of the faces, all the people love looking at him, which is Melech b'yofyotech hazanei necha, that's the verse for it. And then he's the king. That's the way to identify who the king is. That's called, once more, it's a very, very important thing to understand what is l'istat lo b'yikorat demalka v'tulo. That this priest comes out in heaven, this is the time, this is the opportunity to see the king and no more. So whoever is truly connected a soul, he will just run to look, and he doesn't want anything else, as we said before. Anything else is just a disturbance, a distraction. Because all he wants, all he loves, is to look at the king. And the same is true of the king. That's very important, because it's kamayim apanim apanim. The king is he who loves to look at everyone. You know that the Rebbe used to pass out dollars every Sunday to thousands of people. Why did he spend so much time with an old man? It wasn't so easy to stand up and pass out dollars for 5 hours or 6 or 7 hours at a time. Why did he invest so much energy in that? So he said himself, he likes looking at it's an opportunity to look at faces, to see faces pass by. He loves looking at faces of Jews. Once when he was asked, why he wants to come, about coming to Israel. There are many reasons why he never came to Israel. But once he himself said that I have a tremendous desire to come to Israel, it's my greatest desire, I'm just waiting for a sign from heaven that now is the time to come. And why do I want to be in Israel so much? So you could think millions of answers why the Rebbe wants to be in Israel. But what did he say? He says that if I'll come to Israel, I'll see new faces. See new people. So that's the reason he wants to be in Israel, because see there are millions of new Jews that he never saw before. So once more, that's called that the real, just the one line is that the king is the one that loves to look at you, and that you love to look at him. That's all. Now that in the soul, so what I'm trying to impress you, that is definitely a contact point between inner reality and outer reality. Is the deepest one. It's wisdom. So that's Haskalah. Haskalah is the power of perception. It's the power of native intellect, but more in particular, the power of perception. Go to the next one. Bina. Bina is understanding. Before we said that if a person understands, so he smiles, because he got it. The word Hasaga, which is the word chosen here for Bina, means achievement. That's the literal meaning. It either means, if it's used intellectually, so it means intellectual achievement. The person studied for a whole year, studied a course, and then he took a test, and he succeeded in the exam. So he achieved, he seek. But the same in Hebrew, to achieve, just like actually in English, is also the same thing. It can also be a physical achievement. Achievement means that you're running after something and you made it. You reached it. You reached your goal. You reached your goal and you caught your goal. It's called kach hatvisa. That's the meaning of to achieve. So once more, the word that is used in this context for bina is hasaga. It's intellectual achievement. But once more, that's a word which is very, very reality based. So it's taking a more spiritual concept and using a term which describes this concept, this spiritual soul concept, as it is touching reality. That bina is to achieve. Now, achieve is something which is just the opposite of what we explain chokhmah, which is just perception, to perceive. To perceive is just enough that I'm sitting here and you're sitting there and we're looking at one another. That's to perceive. Panim al panim. To achieve is mean I ran after you and got you. That's something else. That's hasaga. That's in this model, that's what bina is. Then comes dat. And once more, the word for dat is the most potent contact word with reality, because it's called hakara. Hakara is recognition. If chokhmah is the insight why do I like looking at everyone? Because like it says, like the Baal Shem Tov says, every Jew has a soul, has a nefesh elokit. And a person that has often a eigen, that has clear sight, so he can see that beautiful point of Yiddishkeit in every Jew. Even in something which is not a Jewish soul, you can also see the spark that creates it. Last night I was talking with somebody that after the class that says that he loves animals. Is there anything wrong with loving animals? So I said, no, there's nothing wrong with loving animals. Loving animals is great, even because you're supposed to learn something from animals. But if you love your dogs at the expense of other people, that might be a problem. But just loving animals is definitely actually a good thing. So once more, there's something good to see, and there's something good to love in every one of God's creations. To recognize, the word to recognize in Hebrew, as it's used, as the source for this is Megillat Ruth, the scroll of Ruth. That Ruth converted, and then Ba'ashkocha Pratis, her mother-in-law Naomi sent her to the field, and she went to the field of Boaz, who was her besheret, but it was totally non-obvious that this Boaz, the prince of Israel, should be the besheret of this convert. But then, for some mysterious reason, because really she was his besheret, he had Rachmanis on her, and he gave her a special portion in the produce of the fields, and called the payon, what the poor people collect in the field. And she was astonished at why this relationship. Well, she's a shiksa. She's a convert, but she's a shiksa. Why is this guy, is the prince of Israel, why is he relating so nice to me? So what does she say to him? She says, it's a verse from the Ruth. Why did I find favor in your eyes to know, to recognize me? It's called the hakirein, that's this word hakara. And I'm a foreigner. I'm not one of your people by blood. So why do you like me so much? So Chazal say that in that phrase that she said, Nitznitza baruch hakodesh, a spark of divine inspiration and prophecy came into her mouth. And when she said, Lahakireni, why have I found favor that you recognize me? Which is also a panan words, because the root in Hebrew to recognize Hakora is the same two-letter subroot as foreigner. This panan words appears twice in the Tanakh. Once in relation to Joseph and his brothers, once here in relation to Ruth and Boaz. So Chazal say that at that moment the Holy Spirit entered her consciousness and came out of her mouth, that she didn't know what she was saying, but in those words, in that word that she said, Lahakireni, this word Hakara, was a prophecy that he was going to marry her. Because Hakara it's even more than Dat. Dat itself is used for marriage. V'adam yada et chava ishto. But the inner essence, the contact is to recognize, means to recognize your beshert. That's why we said in Chokhmah, who's the king? The king is the one that loves looking at everybody, and everybody loves looking at him. That's haskola. That has to do with the contact of wisdom, which is called haskala. Hasaga is achievement. Recognition is recognition of a very special, unique personal relationship with this thing. For instance, let's think now of the Rebbe, the people passing by the Rebbe in dollars. So, on the one hand, he likes looking at every face. Why did he have to also give out $1 at the same time? Just that people pass by. So the simple answer, of course, is if he wouldn't have done anything, nobody would have come. Had to do something in order to justify this whole targil, the whole exercise. But if you don't do anything, there's nothing there. That's the chitzeniistic reason. But the pneumistic reason is there's two stages. It's a stage of haskolo and a stage of hakoro. That just the pleasure of looking one at the other, that's haskala. And that's, in a certain way, that's equal for everyone. But in giving $1 to you, that's a marriage. That's giving you something. In giving $1 to you, he's looking at you as a very unique individual. He's giving you a blessing for what you need. Once more, it's a spiritual marriage, that giving $1 to you. So that's called recognition. In order to do that, you have to recognize the soul individually, uniquely. Okay, so that's now what we did. We took this is the origin of this whole chart. The fact that in the deep Chassidic literature, the 3 concepts of Chabad are called Haskol, rather than using the terms Chokhmah Binah Dat, they're called Haskolo, Hasogo, and Akaro, which we have here translated the power of perception, the power of comprehension, and the power of recognition. And they're taking each of these intellectual faculties and describing how they impress and relate to reality. Because very often intellectual realm of the soul is called Or Hamir Li'atzmo. It's purely inward. But here the emphasis is on its yesod, that the yesod power in each sefirah is its contact with reality. So again, this is the clue that we have to try to do the same thing for each one of the sefirot. And then to construct this full chart. But the clue, we're taking it from what's explicitly taught in Chassidut, the special new lashon of Chassidut to call Chabad Haskolo, Hasogo, and Akolo. So before we do the 7 lower sefirot, we'll now go up to the origin, what's above Chabad. Above Chabad is Keter. Keter is the super rational level of the soul. So what type of an experience could be one that is, in essence, it's similar to those concepts of Haskala, Hasaga, Akara, but it's Keter. It's not intellect. It's super intellect, super rational. So again, each of the ones that we're now going to explain are alluded to, but it's not so explicit as these 3. And they're alluded to once, but that they're the same idea at a different level. How does a Keter experience, which is even more inward and upward, what is that? What is a Keter experience vis-a-vis reality? So, what's explained in Chassidut is that a Keter experience vis-a-vis reality is not insight into reality, which is already a Chokhmah. It's an experience of wonder. The word is Haflo. That's why I have to get all the words down, which are all the Hebrew words. But we began with Haskolo, Hasogo, Hakoro. Now we're going up to Keter. The experience of Keter, which is the same type of experience, is called Haflo.
Hafla.
Hafla, Hey, Pei, Lamed, Aleph, Hey, from the word Pele, wonder. It's an experience of wonder, which is something which is above my power to fathom, to comprehend, even to perceive. It's above all of the Chabad. It says, "Amot v'itbonen kol kel." There's many verses in Mishlei, in the Tanakh, that says, "Stand and behold." Even you can meditate on wonder. But the meditation is not necessarily an intellectual thing. In Chabad, the intellect is used to meditate, but meditation can be a gateway to wonder. As the verse says, Amod v'hitbonen niflot kel. If a person meditates, contemplates the wonders of nature, he's not contemplating in order to understand them. He's contemplating in order to experience wonder. Amod v'hitbonen niflot kel. Stand and meditate upon the wonders of God. So that experience, once more, that is certainly, it's a contact with reality, but it's a keter contact with reality. It's very, very important. It's very important. If the cultivation of the intellectual faculties are an essential part of education, this one is also certainly a more essential part of education. A child must be educated to experience wonder. To experience wonder is to reveal his super rational soul, level of soul, his crown. That's who speaks about this. The Rambam. The Rambam says that the way to come to love and fear God is through experiencing, contemplating the wonders of the world, of creation. How would that be explained in the terminology of Chassidut? Love and fear are the two primary emotions of the heart, the first two ones. It says the heart, the emotions of the heart are rooted in the super-rational level of Keter. The mind is just a transition. It's called a ma'avar, the mind. But where the love and fear come from, they come from the crown. They come from will, from pure will. The pure will expresses itself as a love will or as a fear will. So again, the Rambam understands this very well. He says that the way to come to love and fear of God is through experiencing the wonders of God in creation. Right. So the ability of the soul to experience wonder is a very, very important thing. It's like the beginning of the first contact of the soul with reality. The very, very first and highest contact with the soul with reality is and there's wonder. Sometimes you would say it's awe. Standing in awe is already fear. So you immediately see the relationship between Keter, the crown, and the heart. So you stand in wonder, so you're standing in awe of the Creator. You're standing in wonder of the creation. You're standing in awe of the Creator. But you can also understand that if I see a beautiful scene in nature, that it just astonished me. I'm standing in wonder. So I'm certainly not afraid of it. I love it. So actually, we can feel that the love, which is the attraction, as we'll see, I'm attracted to it. To stand in awe means I'm standing back. I'm about to fall backwards because of my awe. But love is attraction. So obviously, the stand in wonder has both elements to it, and I'm infinitely attracted to it. At the same time, I'm overtaken by it. Being overtaken by it is all. So it's very, very easy to understand that from the wonder experience of Keter derive and are born the two basic emotions of the heart, which are love and fear. And once more, that's what the Rambam explains. Right. So that was Hafla. We probably all know that the Rebbe said that to bring the redemption to the world is to bring the Aleph into the Gola. And in the Aleph, he said that there are three levels. And the highest level of the Aleph is Pele, is the wonder. So by experiencing wonder, we're also bringing redemption to the world, because we're bringing the highest level of the Aleph, Pele, into the context of reality, which is now the unrectified reality, called the exile, and thereby transforming the exile into into redemption. So that's another very, very important thing about being able to experience wonder. Right, so now we come to another pair that is explicit, but not all of these things we said. You find bits of a chart here and there, and then our task is to put them together, based upon a very famous Ma'amar Chazal that a person has to know how to have balanced relationships with reality. And he has to know when to push away and when to bring close. And the expression is smol dochav yamin mekarevet. That you have to know how to use your left hand to push off, and you have to know at the same time how to use your right hand to bring near. And actually, the way it's explained, since the order that Chazal say, they say smol dochav yamin mekarevet. So it implies that the very first act of smol dochav, the left pushing off, is in order to be able afterwards to know and to be able to bring near that which should be brought near. But in order to bring near that, to attract and to bring near that which should be brought near, first a person has to make some havdalah. It's one of the classic examples of havdalah before hamtakah. Bringing near is a sweet experience. But in order that should be a rectified experience, a true experience, first there has to be some havdalah, some separation, that something has to be pushed away in order to be able to have a pure relation with the good and to embrace it and bring it near. So once more, that's called smol dochav yamin mekarevet. That's maybe the most essential balance in the soul. So the two words for that are obviously meshicha and dechia. To bring near, kiruv, is meshicha, is to attract, limshoch, and to push off is dechia. So that now obviously these two concepts are yesod concepts. It's the yesod of chesed and the yesod of gvura. So once more, as we say, the relation to what is outside, that's yesod. So if the right hand is now actively embracing another in order to bring him near, that's the yesod, that power is the power of the yesod of the right arm. If the left arm is now pushing something off, that's the yesod of the left. So as we said, all of these, the common denominator here, all of them, is the force that each sefirah has to touch reality. So the force of the left in its touching reality is the ability of the left to identify. It must have seichah to it, what to push off. In a certain sense, what to push off requires more intelligence than what to bring near. Because if one's intelligence tells you what to push away, then what is left, that's what you have to bring near. So you don't need to know even what you have to bring near. Just you have to need to know what's awesome. As soon as you know what to push away, then everything else is automatically there to be drawn near. Because innately you want to bring everything near. It's just the mind says beware. There are certain things that will be mikalkel, that will ruin, will degenerate. So beware of those things, and then apply your native desire to bring everything near. So once more, so those two, that's called koach ha-meshicha, the power of attraction. I'm not calling it the law of attraction. The very concept of law of it is a very problematic thing that we will not talk about now. All of these things are powers. So the right is the power of attraction, and the left is the power of repulsion, to repel. Once more, these are the relative yesodot of these two sefirot, how they are applied in action to reality. And once more, those as a pair are more or less obvious, because it's all based upon this Ma'amar Chazal, this Mordocha, Yamin Mekarevet. One which is a little more subtle is the next one, which is Rachamim. In Hebrew, the word here, again, everybody should be writing down the Hebrew words. Geter is Haflo, Chochma is Haskola, Min is Hasogo, Das is Hakoro, Chesed is Meshicho, and Gvura is the Chiyah. Now we're reaching Tiferet. So Tiferet is a new type of term. It's called Hismasrus. That in English it's very difficult to Hitmasrut. In English it's difficult to translate, but in Yiddish it's very simple. It's a very common, one of the most common Chassidic terms in Yiddish is Übergegebenkeit.
What is it?
Übergegebenkeit. You're given over to someone or to something. So the best word in English is devotion. You're devoted to something. So that's why you call it the power of devotion. Nonetheless, the word devotion has all kinds of implications to it. It's not exactly what we mean, but there's not, as far as I know, there's no other word in English for Übergegebenkeit. And our devotion has, so to speak, a lot of religious connotations to it. And here we do not mean the religious connotations of the word devotion. We mean the rachmanus, the empathy connotations of devotion, that you're devoted to another soul because you're given over. You can be devoted to God also, because the very word religion is not a Jewish word. You can be übergegeben zum Ebersten, to God. It's also, it's not that you're in devotion, you're doing something. This is reality. Judaism, Yiddishkeit is reality, it's something real. To be devoted to God means I'm devoted to do His will. If there's some other religion, quote unquote, that doesn't have mitzvahs, so then the word devotion is meaningless. If there's nothing to do, so then to be devoted is just some religious, meaningless term. But if there's something to do because somebody needs you, God also needs us to do His commandments. And I have to be übergegeben, and I have to be given over to do for Him, for you. That's the ultimate expression, or the ultimate contact of Tiferet. Because once we're Tiferet, the inner experience is rachman, compassion, which also can be translated as empathy. It's coming from a place of true empathy. And if there's true empathy, so obviously that motivates me to give myself over totally, to go out of myself, to go out of my way. It's also pun in English, that the middle, this is called the middle way, the derech yeshara, is tiferet. Tiferet also, tiferet omina adam. So now, as a pun on words in English, the middle way is always to go out of my way to do you as much as I can do for you. That's the middle way. Because I'm always, what Übergegeben means to go over and beyond and out of your way and out of my context, out of my lifestyle and life pleasure in order to be devoted to you. Let's say one particular context. Tiferet is also called the son of the parents. All of the emotions are sons, but the one that is the essential son, S-O-N, is this sefirah of Tiferet. He has two parents, father and mother, Chochmah and Binah and Kabbalah. So a very, very important part of his Übergegebenkeit, of his Masrut, is his Kibud Avayim. There's one classic, maybe the most classic example in the Ten Commandments of being given over to somebody else. It's being given over to your parents. The one that is commanded especially to be given over to his parents is Tiferet. Because Malchut, that is the daughter, also has a mitzvah of Kibbud Avim. But if she's married, it says in the halacha that her husband comes first, for some mysterious reason. That has to be... nonetheless, if she has a good husband, her husband will allow her and encourage her also to be übergegeben to her parents, because she definitely has a mitzvah of kibbud avim. But the one that has nothing in his way of observing kibbud avim, there's no husband in his way, is the son, which is Tiferet. That's also a beautiful way to understand that the essence of Ibergegebenkeit, of Hitmasrut, is in this sefirah of Tiferet. So it's either, like in this example, upward to your parents. It's also reality, but it's upward, or it's downward to anybody else in your range of experience. All the other people, and definitely it's Ibergegebenkeit to the Jewish people. Tell another beautiful story about my father-in-law, Rav Moshe Tzvi Segal. Maybe people have read in books of the beginning of Zionism in Israel, the one that blew the shofar at the Kotel, began the revolution against the British mandate. So that he did as a bocher before he got married. When he got married to my mother-in-law, so they both personal tnoim. Before I get married, you do tnoim, the conditions of marriage. It's a document. Everybody has the same one, but some couples make their own private, unique tnoim before they got married. So his tnoim was, he said to his wife to be, he says, my tnoim is that the Jewish people comes first, my parents come second, and you come third. And she said that because of that, that's why she decided to marry him.
Wow.
So that's Chassidic tnoim. In any event, that's Ibergegebenkeit, that's Hitmasrut. That's the order is that the first Hitmasrut is the Jewish people, and then the parents, and then everybody else, beginning from one's wife. The wife, in this context, is the gate to every other personal individual. First, the wife, as it says that Ahavat Yisrael, loving every Jew, begins from husband and wife. Okay, so that was a Tiferet. Then comes Netzach and Hod. So the words in Hebrew are Hischazkus and Hasmoda. Hitchazkut, Netzach is Hischazkus, and Hod is Hasmoda, Hatmada, which here we translated the power to invigorate. But you're going to have to explain what we meant by that. And that was the hardest one to find a word. We had a very hard time to find an English word for that one. And the power to persevere, which is also not an exact 100% good translation. But these two sefirot and the next one also, you saw the three emotions that come to play whilst in action. So obviously their active part is very, very active, because they're already active. The whole nature of these three sefirot is action. And here we're talking about the yesod, their drive and contact, so that's even more pronounced action. The word Netzach means means several things. The most important basic meaning is victory. Why do we say that the power that this sefirah has on reality, beginning with on me, is his chaskus? His chaskus means never give up. Means if you have to win, you have to win. If you fall, you have to get up. You have to win. I have to win. I, the Jewish people, I'm a Jew, and a Jew is a winner. And if it doesn't seem like that, if I'm not winning, so I have to be mischazik. So again, the word invigorate doesn't convey this too well. His chaskus, maybe you can have a better word for this in English. His chaskus means to always be re-strengthening yourself. Never let yourself for one instant fall into despair. Always new energy, new encouragement, new security. Once part of the inner experience of Netzach is bitachon pa'il, active trust. It's confidence that Hashem is going to give me the power to implement and to accomplish my objectives. But the word now that we're using, which is like all of the other terms in the context of this particular sefirah, is his chaskus. Does anybody remember which Rebbe, which tzaddik in Chassidus liked this word the best? The whole Chassidus is just all around this word, his chaskus. L'chatchila is something complimentary in Chabad. But what Chassidus is all based on this word that we're choosing here, hid chaskut. Be mischazik, don't fall into despair. Be mischazik. That's Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman is totally, that's his word. Never despair. You're always, what does he mean? It means you're always on the verge of despair, always on the verge of falling. Netzach is the right foot, and both feet are on the verge of fall. But always keep your energy level high. Just as a parenthetical thing, that in order to knock something. There are nowadays Bali Tshuva and Breslov in Israel which are not the way we think about Tshuva should be and the Yid should be. And they think and they claim, they even say that they have sources that Rabbi Nachman must have taken dope, must have been on dope. And they justify themselves taking dope in order to never fall into despair. so again, I said that in order to knock that, because we totally disagree with that. And chas v'sholom to imagine that Rabbi Nachman took dope. So, but in any event, this is just to emphasize that his inyan, which is the who knows why he's related to this sefirah of Netzach, Rabbi Nachman. He himself, what did he say about himself? He said, Nitzachti v'ani anatzeach. I'm a winner, I've won, and I'm going to continue winning. Why? Because his name, Nachman, equals Netzach, exactly. The Arizal already said that every Jewish soul has one day in Sfirat Omer that's his day. His Sfirah, what's the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Lag B'Omer. Hod Sheba'o, what's the day of the Rabbi Maharash? The Chassidic Riber. What did Rabbi Nachman say about himself? What's my day? Netzach Shebenetzach. That's what he said. Netzach but Shebenetzach is the middle day. No, his birthday is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. He said, that's my day in Sfiras Omer. So in Kabbalah it says that everybody has his day in Sfiras Omer. Everyone has his unique individual tikkun and sefirah Torah. So his day is Netzach Shebenetzach, and his name Nachman equals Netzach, and his inyan is purely this word, his chaskus. And he said about himself, I won, I'm going to continue to win. Just recently there was a manuscript of the Alter Rebbe that was discovered and publicized over the internet, actually, that the Alter Rebbe is recorded to have said that at the end of generations, just before Mashiach comes, which means now, many lowly souls will be drawn to Rebbe Nachman. So the people, he said, like neshamot nemuchot. So for Chabad, that was an insult. But when I heard that, I said, that's not an insult. That's good. That sounds really good. That he's there to attract. That they're winners, right? Just that they shouldn't be taking dope. That's the they should know how to love their wives. Also, that's also a problem. In any event, that's all to explain that this inner power and drive of Netzach is his chaskus. Always to be mitchazek, never to fall into any despair, because we're winners. Say the Rebbe, how did he express? What was his way? You know that many adages of Rabbi Nachman and Chabad is the same, more or less the same thing, just in Chabad style. For instance, never to despair. So how did Rabbi Nachman say that? He said, "En shum yush ba'olam klal." There's nothing to despair about. He actually said, if a person despairs, is a fool. No. The term in Breslau is "En shum yush ba'olam klal." There's no despair in the world at all. It's all an illusion. Despair is an illusion. How did we say that in Chabad? The Rebbe said, "It's nito kin for father." There's never a lost case. There are no lost cases. About us winning, that we're winners. How do we say that in Chabad? Nidanot. It's a phrase from Chazal, from the Medrash. But this is a phrase that the Rebbe adopted. So, Nidanot, we're the winners. All right. So again, to be a winner, you have to always be mitchazek. So if you have a good English word for this, I'd appreciate it. What? Revitalize.
Enliven.
Enliven, I thought of revitalize is maybe better. Revitalization is good, that's a good one. Because you can change it even on the page. Revitalize. The power to revitalize. That's a better choice. Right, maybe you'll get a better word also for persevere. In Hebrew, the word is hasmoda. A person that never stops learning Torah is called a masmid. That he never stops. No distractions, nothing that takes him off his objective. It's not that he has to revitalize himself all the time. It's just that he's on the way. He's always on the way. That's called hatmada. That it's a totally ongoing endeavor. What he's doing, he's thinking about it all day long. 24 hours a day he's thinking about his objective. Levi has to bring Mashiach. He never stops thinking about it. He never stops talking about it. He never stops doing. He's a masmid. He has an objective and he never stops. That's Hasmadi. You have a better word than persevere for that? Power of obsession.
Compulsive.
Addicted. Okay, if you can put all those words together into some other word, that would be good, because all those words have negative connotations.
This is raw drive, where Netzach is more.
It's not even much more. Netzach is always revitalizing yourself. It's shots of energy. You have this shot, and you're always, because you feel at one moment you feel lack of energy. So you have you immediately when you feel that lack of energy, you take out your thing from your pocket and you give a shot of energy. That's called revitalization. That's his chaskus. That's netzach. They keep your energy level high. And that's what's going to make you, to ensure that you're going to be the winner. Hold is always on track. Always on track, and the inner experience of hold is to me with sincerity. It's actually simplicity. What does it mean that the person is 100% into what he's doing? It means that he's sincere about it. It means that he's even simple about it. There's nothing else to do. What is a simple Chabad Chassid? That the Rebbe said that our generation is to bring Mashiach. So that moment that he heard that from the Rebbe, so there's nothing else to do in this world. He has nothing else to do. He just has to bring in things. So that's what he thinks about. And that's what he talks about. That's what he tries to do.
This is what
it's
because if you just have to push the energy without the guiding force, without the focus, then you can be.
It's active. Now I'm thinking of a word sometimes we use in English for this commitment. I forgot that word. It's not just it's not just the theoretical commitment. It's like the feeling, being committed to something. The commitment, the active, ongoing commitment that you're always committed.
Dedication.
Right, it's dedication. If we call the tiferet devotion, which again we said was a problematic word in English. So this one is you're always committed, you're always dedicated, and you're always doing it. And it's not because you always have to encourage yourself to do it. It's just because you're a simpleton. You have nothing else. This is my life. I'm happy doing this because happiness is actually bina, and it says that bina ad hodit pashtat. So I'm very happy. This is my life. This is what I'm supposed to do. And this is what I'm doing. So that's called hasmada. Once more, the way that this word is used in the classic literature is a Talmid Chacham, actually a student that loves learning, and that's what he does all day long. He learns. He's a masmid. In Tanya it says that sometimes here also you have to make an effort to learn more than you're used to learning. And if you're used to learning 100 times, you have to make an effort to learn 101 times. But Alavai, first we have to be used to learning 100 times. For us, that's a big deal to learn 100 times.
Rabbi, in the class we related Chesed to Yesod as being two parts of the same flow that are more.
Right, so now it's very clear because here this is the Yesod of Chesed, because we're saying that all of this are Yesod drives in each one of these sefirot. Okay, so we have to think of a better word than perseverance for this one. But it's this hasmada. Then in foundation, what we've translated here as context. So this is a very, very common word in Chassidus, hiskashrus. It's the word which actually begins in dad, because there's a very strong connection between Yesod and dad. But it's the word that everybody has heard of in reference to a tzaddik, to the Rebbe, his kashrus, to be connected. So as we said that devotion, Übergegebenkeit in Tiferet, is very strongly related to be Übergegeben to your parents. His kashrus in Yesod is always related to be able to find a tzaddik, to connect yourself to the tzaddik, to be one of his men. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu is his special men, Anshe Mesha. his special soldiers, his inner crew. Then afterwards, a person has to learn how to, not just how to be übergegeben, to be devoted to someone else because of empathy, to help other people and be compassionate. He also has to be mekusher to other people. Not just your Rebbe, but your Rebbe is one part, it's going up, to connect to your Rebbe. But that connecting to your Rebbe should give you the power to connect to other people. And so you can help me explain what's the difference between being übergeben to someone, to be devoted to somebody, and to be connected to somebody. You can tell me what is that? What's the difference between übergegebenheit, I'm devoted to you, or that I'm connected to you?
Connection has empathy.
It's also empathy.
No, but devotion doesn't necessarily have empathy.
That's why I said devotion isn't the best word.
Connection is a two-way. It's a relationship. It's a two-way experience. Devotion, out of empathy, can just be one person towards another. And there's no matching. There's no. A student with a teacher has to make sure that he's speaking in a language that the student can understand. The student can be very devoted to the teacher, and out of empathy, but there's not a relationship that's built out of.
Okay. So what you said is that the connection implies a real two-way relationship. That's correct. What else can be said about two souls being connected to one another, more than just one being übergegeben, devoted to the other? Friends, let's go back to the children-parents relationship. Especially in our generation, the Arizal says that we definitely have a mitzvah of honoring our parents, but it does not mean that spiritually the child is connected to his parents. We find that, unfortunately, very, very much in our generation, that there's virtually no spiritual connection, inner connection. And nonetheless, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be devoted to honor your parents. The phrase in Yiddish is zwei dinim. It's two different things.
Some of the connection is more about the essence of the Shabbos.
All right, so that from this example, why does the Arizal say? This is from the Arizal. He says that in later generations, a child is not necessarily related and connected to his parents. They're his biological parents, and he has all of the mitzvot of children to parents. But just because he's your biological father and mother, and we're talking about everybody being Jewish here, so it's all Jewish, and biologically they're your parents, but it does not mean that they're your same soul root at all. That the Arizal said 500 years ago. How much the more so nowadays. So it's clear that connection implies that really you are the same. You're connected. What did we have in Dat? In Dat we had recognition. We said that recognition is a recognition of soulmates. To be able to recognize, let's say, all the problem that people have with not finding their beshert. So what's the problem? Where is the problem? The problem is in Dat. Why do they have that problem in Dat? Because of Pegam Abri throughout their lives. As explained in all the Sporim, in Tanya as well, all kinds of sexual offenses ruin one's faculty of Dat. And one's faculty of Dat is recognition. And recognition is, well, we said that the most important context of recognition is to recognize your Bashar. That's why there's so much problem with that nowadays. At the level of the heart, Yesod is what corresponds to Dat. So at the level of the heart, that's connection, that is kashrus. Once more in Tanya, the word is kashrus he uses for Dat. But here we're using the same word for Yesod, because it's the same thing. But Yosef Atzadik was mekusher to his brothers, even though they hated him. That's what it also says in Tanya, that we have to learn from him. So So even though you just said before that Iskashrut implies a two-way relationship, nonetheless, in exceptional cases, you can know and feel Mekusha to somebody else, and he can even aid you. Obviously, that's not an ideal state, but it's definitely a possibility, and that's what we learn from Joseph and his brothers. Joseph is the archetypal soul of Yesod. Alright, so does anybody else have something to say about these kashrus?
The power of interconnection. I mean, it's like you get so in that you don't get out there. It's one. I mean, all other connection, kashrus, knots, tying, connecting. It sounds like a tube goes out and makes it. This is interconnected.
Okay.
Interconnection is a better word.
First of all, grammatically, the word is in the hitpa'el form. That's what you're saying. That it's a reflective form. That is going back. It's going out, but it's also going back into yourself. Lehit kasher. It's not likshor. It's not kesher. It's his kashrus. That same grammatical form. Where did we have that before in all of our words? We had it 2 times before. The reflective grammatical form. Hismasros, which is devotion, that's Jacob above Yosef, and his chaskos, which is the revitalization, that obviously is re-energizing. Actually, one of the words we thought in English was re-energizing, but revitalizing is better. So that's there you actually, in the English also have the word re, that the re is the reflective form. But that same grammatical form is both in Tiferet and in Yesod here, his kashrus, his masros. Okay, so now the last one is haba. Hey, bet. It's a reflective form, means that it's going out, but it's also going back into yourself. Devotion also, however much you go out, you have to come back in to go out more. Same thing is kasha, however much you connect, it's a cycle. There's something about a cycle of out and in all of these words. That's the reflective form. Right, the last one is haba, hey, bet, ayin, hey, expression. That's malchus. Expression can be either words, it can be even facial expression, any type of expression. Any type of outward expression. The outward expression to reality is like I see where you're at because you express yourself. Sometimes a facial expression will be much truer than the words, because in words you can hide yourself. Sometimes you can lie. Unless you're a real good actor, so in general people don't lie with their facial expressions or other expressions. If you learn to mischak, to act, so maybe you can lie with your facial expressions as well. But expression is malchus. It's called the revealed world. That you are revealing yourself to the outside world. Just pure revelation. Haba'ah. So that's the yesod, once more, that's the contact power within Malchus. Right, so obviously a lot more can be said about all of these, but now we covered in short this very, very fundamental chart. As we said, a chart like this we call it a parzuf. And it could be that this particular parzuf that we studied today is second in importance after the original parzuf of the inner meaning of the sefirot, which should be familiar to all of us. We went through it before also. please, if there are some questions. Or,
yeah, just a quick question. The basis of love and fear that we were talking about earlier, the meditation on the magnitude of creation as being able to inspire love and both love and fear.
Yes.
That it seems like the next logical place to go from there is gratitude. And I'm just wondering how that ties into what we've been talking about in terms of the concept of gratitude and the
Right, so gratitude, we explain that's echoing something. That's from the word head. Hold, gratitude is to echo. It means it's reflective light. So what gratitude is called reflect anything. All of the emotions are reflected in gratitude. Gratitude reflects the emotion, the other emotions, the previous emotions of the heart. And since the two primary emotions are love and fear, so gratitude is their reflection. The reflection upwards. If I love and fear, and then love and fear, a person is not supposed to be left with a sense of self-satisfaction. But obviously, if I experience, let's just give a simple example, I experience some wonder, a wondrous thing, whether it's the wonders of nature or whether it's, we didn't actually mention this before, hashkocha, a wonderful hashkocha pratis, that Hashem did a miracle, hashkocha pratis. That's also wonder. That's a person that we didn't mention before. It's important to add. That wonder either means just a wonder of creation, or it means a personal wonder, which is a hashkocha, some great hashkocha pratis, a miracle of hashkocha pratis. That's also wonder. So the wonder arouses love and fear. After emotion doesn't stay around forever; it fades off, fades away. If the mind is very, very strong, it can have the emotion remain for a longer period of time, as explained with Tanya. But eventually, the emotion, especially emotion of a wonder, which is not intellectual, so it has nothing to hold on to, because you just had this wonder, it's going to fade away. Now, was it a good experience or a bad experience? It was a good experience. Whether it was love or awe that came out of the wonder, was good. What happens when a good experience fades away? What are you left with? In Kabbalah, what the person is left with after a direct experience is called a reshima. It's called the secret of the reshima. What are you left with after the experience fades away? So you're left with a reshima. Now, if it was a good experience, you had a good time, the person went to the Luna Park and had a great time, but now he left the Luna Park. He's out of it, but he has some impression. He felt good. He had a good day. Someone comes out. He had a good day. Yeah, I had a great day. I went to the ball game. I had a great experience. So what are you left with afterwards? After it's all over and fades away, you're left with some satisfaction. That reshima that you're full of satisfaction. You have satisfaction at the end. Is that good or bad? So satisfaction seems to be pretty good, but it says that if satisfaction is patting myself on the shoulder, that's bad. If satisfaction is gratitude, that's good. And I'm trying to explain to you what gratitude is after, how that reflects positive emotion. Because when will I experience or be able to give gratitude? Only when the direct experience is over. That's when I had this. I stood in wonder. In the moment of wonder, I can't say thank you for it. I'm shocked. Wonder is a shock. Then that arouses love and fear. Love and fear. I'm also not saying thank you yet. But as the love and fear is dissipating, then I begin to receive in myself this impression. Now, what I'm going to remain with. I'm great. God's what's the final word? The final word should be thank you. Thank you for that experience of wonder, and thank you for that arousal of love and fear. So that's the way to understand that gratitude is the final reflection of the experience. That's because the word gratitude, hod, in Hebrew is echo, means to echo. It's the echoing of the experience. Okay. So
The same thing for all the others.
I don't promise you that.
Well, when you just said
This is the most important.
when you said gratitude should be the final experience, that's also Yisod.
No, gratitude is hod.
No, but that's in Hod.
Right. You said also
you just saying
anything.
Malchus.
That
A gratitude is
Even-
the bottom line.
gratitude is what comes at the end. Malchus is also behod. It's the feminine power, the feminine energy is in hod. Anything at the end of anything you can have hod. You can have gratitude. Gratitude is the returning light. It's the sefirah of hod. That's what the acknowledgement is.